I want to talk about just a couple more things with field properties, and one is in relation to the yes/no data type that we discussed earlier. And if you'll recall, that was on the organizations table where we set that up. So I'm going to go to the organizations table, and I'm going to go to Design View, and you'll see there, this is our yes/no field that we set up. It was set up for release forms. If I look at the data view and scroll over, you'll see it's in there for release forms. And if I go back to design, one thing you'll notice with formatting is that you get some options in here. Besides yes, no, you could change it so that it says true, false, or even on, off, if that is what you want to set it as. So depending on the context of how the field is used, decide which is the best for your database. I'm going to leave that as yes, no. That makes sense in this case because it's, if I go to Datasheet, save it. I didn't really change anything, but I'm going to just save it there. In this case, it makes sense that we say yes, no. Release forms required either yes with a check mark or no, they're not required. And you may be wondering, it's displaying there a check mark in the box. It's not actually displaying the words yes and no, but we will have some options later when you build reports that you could actually display the words yes, no, or true, false, or on, off in a report versus the checkbox. So I just wanted you to be aware of it here. And also, of course, you can change the default value to be either yes or no. Another thing I want to discuss in here is the indexing of fields. And to demonstrate the indexing of fields, I'm going to close out organizations. I want to show it in the students table. So if I pull that up, let's go to Design View. And with almost any field, you can set up indexes. And a good place to do that in the students table, I'm going to set up an index on last name. And if I go to last name and you look at the field properties down here, under indexed, it says no. By default, there are no indexes on most of the fields. But what an index does, as it shows over here on the right side, an index speeds up searches and sorting on the field, but may slow updates to the field. And you'll see in here, with the index, the default is no, but you get some options. You can set an index and allow duplicates or not allow duplicates. And in this case, I'm going to set up an index, and with a last name type field, we would always want to allow duplicates because, of course, there could be more than one person with the same last name. So say if you had more than one person in the school with the name Smith, you'd want to allow duplicates, of course, with something like that. You would never want to say duplicates are not okay with this particular type of field. And the reason we even set up an index is, like it says here, it would speed up searches. So if we had a very, very large table, say we had a student table and we were in a school with maybe 2,000 students, setting up the index would allow searches to go faster, especially on fields where we have lots of unique values. So the last name field, often many of the values are all different from each other than you might find a few duplicates out there, but lots of unique values. So that's another criteria where you would want to possibly set up an index. You wouldn't care about setting up an index where a field may only have 2 or 3 possible values. So for instance, if you're doing a lookup to another table and there's only a few possible values, it doesn't add a lot to add that index. Indexes create extra overhead in the table, they take up space, and they can slow down the database. So you got to be careful about setting up too many indexes. And by the way, searches are what we're going to do when we get to building queries. So you see more of that in the query module when we get there. And something else to point out too, if we look at the ID field, our primary key field here, which is the ID, and it's an auto number field, you'll notice here for indexing it says yes, no duplicates. And this is another reason you don't want to change the field properties for your auto number field. In this case, because it's a primary key, you would never want duplicates. Those have to be unique, and that's the definition of what a primary key is. It has to be a unique number or a unique identifier for each record. So you would never change that for the ID field. Yet you would want it to be yes, no duplicates. But if you notice, with other fields, the default is going to be no. And you may want to change those again depending on if you're doing lots of searches on that field and it's a large table with lots of records and the field you're indexing has lots of unique values.